Enjoy the story. The black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the curb outside the Los Angeles Street Food Festival, gleaming like a dark jewel against the backdrop of food trucks and colorful vendor tents. Victor Ashford stepped out, his custom-tailored charcoal suit catching the afternoon sun. At 42, he'd built an empire on precision, technique, and an uncompromising vision of what fine dining should be. 3 Michelin stars, a net worth that had recently crossed 8 figures, a reputation that made reservation lists fill up 6 months in advance. And right now, he was slumming it. "Mr. Ashford, over here!" A production assistant waved frantically, headset askew. "We're so honored you agreed to be our guest judge." Victor offered a tight smile, the kind he'd perfected for food critics and investors. "Well, Marcus, when the James Beard Foundation personally asks you to evaluate authentic street cuisine, one doesn't simply decline." His tone suggested he'd considered it, though. The festival sprawled across 4 city blocks, a chaotic symphony of sizzling meat, shouting vendors, and the kind of crowds Victor typically avoided. Families clustered around picnic tables. Street musicians competed with blaring radios. The air hung thick with the scent of grilled onions, frying oil, and something sweet he couldn't quite place. It was all so unrefined. "The finalists are setting up now," the assistant said, leading him toward an elevated judging platform. 10 competitors, 45 minutes, one dish that represents their roots. The winner gets $50,000 and a feature in Food and Wine magazine. Victor's eyes swept the cooking stations. Professional setups mostly, stainless steel prep tables, commercial-grade burners, sponsored equipment from brands he recognized. These weren't amateur-hour operations. Except for Station 7. A girl stood there, maybe 16, 17 at most. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, jeans that had been washed too many times, a faded blue t-shirt with some cartoon character he didn't recognize. She was unpacking ingredients from a small cooler, her movements careful and deliberate. What caught his attention, though, was the knife. It was ancient. The wooden handle was worn smooth, darkened by decades of use and oil from countless hands. The blade itself, maybe 8 inches long, showed the telltale signs of 1,000 sharpenings. The metal had thinned near the edge, creating that subtle curve that only came from years of maintenance. Duct tape wrapped around the handle where it met the blade, holding something together that should have been replaced long ago. Victor found himself walking closer, curiosity overriding his usual detachment. "What do we have here?" His voice carried that particular tone he used when he'd already decided something wasn't worth his time. The girl looked up. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they met his without flinching. "My station, sir." "I can see that." He gestured at her knife, lying on the cutting board. "I meant that artifact. Did you pull that out of a dumpster, or perhaps it's some family heirloom from the Dark Ages?" A few people nearby stopped their conversations. A camera crew, sensing drama, swiveled toward them. "It was my grandmother's," the girl said quietly. Her hands didn't shake, she didn't look away. "Your grandmother's." Victor leaned against her prep table, crossing his arms. "And you think you can compete in a serious culinary competition with that piece of scrap metal? Do you have any idea what the other competitors are working with?" He wasn't wrong. At Station 3, a chef from a Koreatown gastropub was unpacking a set of Japanese knives that probably cost more than this girl's entire wardrobe. Station 5 had brought a portable sous vide setup. Station 9 had a molecular gastronomy kit with nitrogen tanks. "I know what they have," the girl said. She picked up the knife, testing its weight. "But my abuela taught me that the tool doesn't make the cook, the heart does." Victor laughed, actually laughed. "The heart? Is that what they're teaching in culinary school now? Let me guess, you didn't go to culinary school, did you?" "No, sir." "Of course not." He straightened, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. "Let me ask you something, sweetheart. Have you ever even tasted real cuisine? Not this, he waved at the festival around them, street food carnival. I'm talking about actual refined cooking, technique, chemistry, art. I've tasted food made with love, she said. That's real enough for me. The production assistant had appeared at Victor's elbow, looking nervous. Mr. Ashford, we need to... Tell you what. Victor's eyes glinted with something sharp. How about we make this interesting? Instead of judging from up there, he nodded at the platform. I'll compete. Right here. Right now. Same rules. 45 minutes. A dish that represents my roots. The assistant's face went pale. Sir, I don't think... Against her. Victor pointed at the girl. If street food is so authentic, so full of heart, let's see if it can stand up to someone who actually knows what they're doing. What do you say, honey? Think your grandmother's knife and all that love can compete with real skill? The girl studied him for a long moment. Around them, the festival had gone quiet. Other competitors had stopped their prep work. Spectators were pulling out phones, sensing something worth recording. What's your name? She asked. Victor Ashford. 3 Michelin stars, owner of Ashford & Co., Ashford's Table and Ashford Noir. I've cooked for presidents, celebrities, and people who actually understand food. He said it matter-of-factly, like reciting a grocery list. And you are? Sophia Martinez. She set down the knife and extended her hand. I work at my mother's food truck after school. I've never won any stars, or cooked for anyone famous. But I'll accept your challenge, Mr. Ashford. Her handshake was firm. Too firm for someone who should be intimidated. Victor turned to the assistant. Make it happen. I'll need a station. And get me a knife that wasn't forged during the Bronze Age. 30 minutes later, after frantic phone calls and pulled strings, the competition was restructured. 9 finalists became spectators. The crowd had swelled to several hundred people. News of Victor Ashford. The Victor Ashford competing against a teenager had spread through social media like wildfire. Local food bloggers were live streaming. Someone had already set up a betting pool. Victor had commandeered Station 1, the most sophisticated setup. His team had delivered his personal knife kit German steel, each blade worth more than Sophia's entire week's wages. He'd changed into chef's whites, custom-made with his initials embroidered in silver thread on the breast pocket. Sophia remained at Station 7, unchanged. That knife still lay on her cutting board. Her ingredients looked almost criminally simple compared to Victor's spread of exotic mushrooms, imported butter, and ingredients with names most people couldn't pronounce. Competitors ready? The head judge, a woman from the James Beard Foundation, looked like she couldn't believe this was happening. The theme remains, a dish that represents your roots. 45 minutes on the clock. Begin! Victor moved with the precision of a Swiss watch. His hands flew through prep work, brunoise cuts so perfect they could have been measured with calipers. He'd decided on a dish that showcased everything he'd learned in Paris, refined in Copenhagen, perfected in his own kitchens. A play on bouillabaisse, deconstructed and reimagined with foam, sous vide seafood, and a saffron air that would be plated with tweezers and architectural precision. This was cuisine. This was art. Sophia, meanwhile, had started a fire in her small portable grill. Actual wood and charcoal, sending up thin wisps of smoke. She was making. Victor squinted. Tacos? He almost felt bad. Almost. The crowd had divided itself, half clustered around Victor's station, watching him create magic with molecular gastronomy and techniques that looked like science experiments. The other half gravitated toward Sophia, drawn by the smell of her grill, the simplicity of her movements. She worked slowly, methodically. Each piece of meat was seasoned by hand, the spices rubbed in with care rather than tossed with efficiency. She'd brought a small cutting board from home. Victor noticed it was worn in the exact same pattern as her knife. The wood darkened in familiar grooves, and she cut vegetables with that ancient blade. The movements weren't fast, but they were sure, confident. Something nagged at the back of Victor's mind. Something about the way she held that knife, the angle of her cuts, the rhythm of the blade against the board. He shook it off. Probably something he'd seen on a cooking show. These street vendors all learned from the same YouTube videos anyway. At the 20-minute mark, Victor plated his first element, a perfect quenelle of saffron aioli, placed with tweezers. 3 drops of reduced shellfish essence, spaced exactly 2 centimeters apart. A microgreen garnish that cost $4 per ounce. Sophia was grilling meat. That was it. Grilling meat and warming tortillas. At 30 minutes, Victor had assembled his components into a work of art. Foam, glass, crystalline structures made from reduced stock and gelatin. 3 different textures of the same root vegetable, each prepared with a different technique. The plate looked like it belonged in a museum. Sophia was chopping cilantro and dicing onions. 5 minutes, the judge called. Victor began his final plating. Tweezers, spoons, brushes for the delicate sauce work, each element placed with micrometer precision. This was the kind of dish that got photographed for magazines, that food critics wrote sonnets about. Sophia was assembling tacos. Time! Hands up! Victor stepped back from his creation. 12 components, 4 temperatures, 7 different cooking techniques. It was, objectively, a masterpiece. Sophia had 5 tacos on a simple white plate. She'd garnished them with cilantro, onion, and a squeeze of lime. That was it. The judges approached Victor's station first. He explained each element, the technique, the philosophy behind every choice. They nodded, impressed, tasting carefully. He could see it in their eyes. This was the level of cooking they expected from someone of his caliber. Then they moved to Sophia's station. She didn't explain anything. She just handed each judge a taco and said, "This is taco al pastor, the way my abuela Rosa taught me." Victor watched their faces as they bit in. He expected polite nods, maybe a comment about it being rustic or hearty. What he saw instead stopped him cold. The head judge closed her eyes. Actually closed her eyes. Her expression shifted through surprise, then something deeper. When she opened them again, they were glistening. The other judges had similar reactions. They weren't just tasting food. They were experiencing something. One of them looked at Sophia. "Where did you say you learned this?" "From my grandmother, Rosa Chen. She had a food cart in this exact neighborhood for 40 years. Victor's hands went numb. "Rosa Chen? No. No, that wasn't possible. She passed away 2 years ago," Sophia continued, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "But before she died, she made me promise to keep cooking. She said food was how we keep our loved ones alive. Every time we make their recipes, they're here with us." The knife, the cutting board, the way she held her blade, the rhythm of her cuts. Victor's vision tunneled. 30 years vanished in a heartbeat. He was 12 years old again, skinny, dirty, hiding behind a dumpster in this exact neighborhood because his father was on another bender and his mother had taken his little sister and left him behind. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. An old woman had found him, tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with hands weathered by decades of work. She hadn't called the police or social services. She'd just said, "Come, eat." Her cart had been right here, maybe 50 feet from where they stood now. She'd made him tacos, the smell of grilled pork and pineapple, the most beautiful thing he'd ever experienced. He'd cried while he ate. Couldn't help it. She'd asked his name. He'd lied, said he was Vincent because he was ashamed of being Victor Ashford, the kid whose dad was the neighborhood drunk. She'd let him work for her, cleaning, prepping, running errands. He'd spent 3 months learning from her before social services finally caught up with him and shipped him off to a group home. But in those 3 months, Rosa Chen had taught him everything that mattered. Not just cooking, though, she'd done that too, patiently showing him how to hold a knife, how to taste and adjust, how to respect ingredients. She'd taught him that food was love made visible. He'd forgotten. Somewhere between culinary school and Paris and Michelin stars and seven-figure revenue, he'd forgotten. "Mr. Ashford," the judge was speaking to him. "Would you like to taste the competing dish?" His hands shook as he took the taco Sophia offered. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him, cameras recording, but all of that faded away as he brought it to his mouth. The first bite shattered him. It tasted exactly like Rosa's. Exactly. The pork had that perfect char, the fat rendering into the meat. The pineapple was grilled just right, caramelized edges cutting through the richness. The tortilla was fresh, still warm, with that slightly sweet corn flavor. The cilantro and onion added brightness. The lime. He was 12 years old behind that cart. Rosa's hands guiding his, showing him how to turn the meat at just the right moment. Her voice, accented but warm, saying, "Cooking is not about impressing people, mijo. Is about feeding their soul." A tear ran down Victor's cheek, then another. The festival had gone silent. Someone's dropped phone clattered on concrete, but no one picked it up. "She taught me," Victor heard himself say. His voice sounded strange, distant. 30 years ago. I was. He couldn't continue. Sophia was staring at him, her eyes wide. "You're Vincent?" He nodded. Couldn't speak. "She talked about you." Sophia's voice was soft now, the defiance gone. She said she once taught a boy who had talent but was so hungry not just for food, but to matter. She said she always wondered what happened to him. She kept hoping he'd come back. The plate fell from Victor's hands. He barely noticed. "I forgot," he said. "I forgot everything she taught me. I turned it all into technique and stars." And he looked around at the festival, seeing it differently now. Not a carnival of crude street food, but a celebration of what Rosa had believed in. Community, authenticity, love. "I'm sorry," he said. To Sophia, to the ghost of Rosa Chen, to himself. "I'm so sorry." The judges were whispering to each other. The head judge cleared her throat. "We need to." "She wins." Victor's voice was stronger now. "Sophia wins. There's no competition here. What she made, what she carries with her." He looked at that ancient knife, understanding now why Sophia wouldn't replace it. It wasn't just a tool. It was a connection, a promise. That's real cooking. That's what I used to know, before I forgot. "Mr. Ashford, we still need official scores." "Then give her mine." 10 out of 10. Perfect. He started removing his chef's coat. "I forfeit. I don't deserve to compete against her." Sophia stepped closer. "She would have wanted you to remember, not to give up." "I haven't given up." Victor looked at his elaborate plate, cooling on the station. It looked exactly like what it was, beautiful, impressive, and completely soulless. "I've just remembered what matters," the judges conferred. The rules hadn't accounted for this scenario, but eventually they made their announcement. Sophia Martinez, winner by unanimous decision, $50,000. The feature in Food and Wine. The crowd erupted. People who'd been recording everything surged forward. Sophia was swallowed by congratulations, by people wanting to taste her cooking, by the production crew trying to get her statement. Victor stood apart, watching. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus," he said to his manager, "I need you to clear my schedule." "What?" "Victor, you have the governor's dinner on Friday, and the Times critic is... Cancel everything. All of it." He watched Sophia hug her mother, both of them crying. "I'm taking a sabbatical." "A sabbatical? For how long?" Victor thought about Rosa Chen's food cart, about the 12-year-old boy she'd fed and taught, about 30 years of climbing a ladder that had taken him further and further from the ground. "However long it takes," he said, and hung up. He waited until the crowd thinned before approaching Sophia and her mother. They were packing up, the ancient knife carefully wrapped in a towel. "Congratulations," he said. "You deserved that win." Sophia studied him. "She would have liked that you remembered." "I'd like..." Victor paused, choosing his words carefully. Would you teach me? What Rosa taught you? I'll pay you, of course. Whatever you want. I need to learn again. The right way. Sophia exchanged a glance with her mother. They had a silent conversation that Victor couldn't follow. Finally, Sophia nodded. Abuela used to say that teaching was how we honor those who taught us. I'll teach you. But she held up a hand as Victor's face lit up, not in some fancy kitchen. Here, at our food truck, where real people eat real food. Done. And you don't pay me. You work, prep, cleaning, whatever needs doing. Absolutely. And Sophia's expression turned serious. You have to promise me something. Anything. Don't forget again. Whatever you build from here, wherever you go, don't forget that food is about people, not stars, not money, people. Victor extended his hand. I promise. Her handshake was firm, just like before. 6 months later, Victor stood in front of a completely different kind of restaurant than he'd ever owned. No white tablecloths, no tasting menus, no reservation system that made you feel privileged to give them money. The sign read, Rosa's Kitchen. Simple, honest. Inside, the menu offered tacos, tortas, and traditional dishes that Sophia and her mother had taught him. The prices were reasonable. The ingredients were the best he could source, but the preparation was about flavor and soul, not molecular manipulation. He'd sold Ashford Noir to fund this place, kept Ashford's table running but completely restructured the menu. Ashford & Co. had been converted into a cooking school that offered free classes to kids from the neighborhood. His Michelin stars, 2 had been pulled in the latest guide. The food world was scandalized. Critics called it career suicide. His investor friends thought he'd lost his mind. Victor had never been happier. On the wall behind the counter hung a photo. Rosa Chen, young and smiling, standing in front of her food cart. Next to it, the knife that Sophia had used in the competition, displayed in a glass case like the treasure it was. Order up, Sophia called from the kitchen. She was working the evening shift, saving money for culinary school. She'd decided to go after all, but on her own terms, to learn technique she could bring back to the food truck, not to escape it. Victor plated the dishes she'd prepared, then carried them out to table 7. A family of 5, the kids arguing over who got more guacamole. Here you go, he said, setting down tacos that looked almost exactly like Sophia's competition dish. The father took a bite and closed his eyes. Man, he said, this tastes like my grandmother used to make. Victor smiled. That's exactly what we were going for. Back in the kitchen, Sophia was training 2 teenagers from the neighborhood, showing them the same knife techniques Rosa had taught her. Teaching them to respect ingredients, to cook with intention, to remember that feeding people was a privilege. Victor watched them work, remembering that 12-year-old boy behind a dumpster, remembering Rosa's patience, remembering how far he'd climbed and how far he'd fallen, and how, somehow ending up here, felt like the success story he'd been chasing all along. His phone buzzed, a text from the food critic at the Times. Heard you opened a taco place. This I have to see. Tomorrow at 7? Victor glanced at Sophia, who was laughing at something one of the teens had said. He looked at the photo of Rosa on the wall. He thought about the dozens of customers who'd come through tonight, most of them families just looking for a good meal at a fair price. He texted back, no reservations, first come first serve, but save room, the tacos will change your life. Then he put his phone away, picked up a towel, and got back to work. Because in the end, that's what Rosa had taught him all those years ago. Work, food, family, community. Everything else was just noise. And for the first time in 30 years, Victor Ashford was finally listening.